Reminder that David and Martin are here. We'll talk to them in just a second, but let's just show you the headlines, how this game is being reported on the back of the papers. There's the Mail again. Carnage! Exclamation mark splashed across the back page there. Night of chaos as nine-man Spurs are finally seen off. From carnage in the Mail to the Sun, and they go with varnage. See what they've done there, because VAR was called upon on numerous occasions. Did they get the big calls right? We'll ask our guest in a moment. Jackson hits 3 on a mad night with 9 video ref calls, 5 goals ruled out, 2 Spurs Reds and 2 huge injuries. There's so much to get through on the show this evening. And one more headline to bring you. This is Martin's paper, The Times. Spurs unravel on a night of VAR drama, beaten, of course, for the first time in the Premier League this season. Right, let's speak to our guest. Martin, I'll start with you as we finish with your paper. I mean, for the journalists who are inside the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium watching this game and are now trying to hit the deadline to get their story in for the papers, how on earth are they going to try and sum that up?
I know. I was going to say they'll need about 3,500 words match report saying what's happened, wasn't it? I mean, it's absolutely incredible game. I mean, Spurs. I don't quite know what happened to them. I mean, I think unravel is a good description, because they were in control and then sort of madness set in, and yeah, it just created one of the most unbelievable games I've ever seen.
Yeah, David, we'll talk about sort of the implications for the two teams and the injuries and some of the stars of the night as well. But just in terms of the game as a whole, so many talking points, big moments, VAR calls. How high do you want to put that on the list of greatest Premier League games ever?
Jules, that has got to be one of the greatest Premier League games of all time. You think back to some of those that have been high scoring for both teams, or a landslide victory for one team. But nothing quite with all those elements, with the red cards, the injuries, the to and the fro. And even when Chelsea had a 2-man numerical advantage, Tottenham defending with such a high line to try and continue this style of play that Ange Postecoglou's implemented, and had chances to equalise the goal that was ruled out for offside by Eric Dyer. And it was quite interesting that, you don't see many teams lose 4-1 and still at the end their fans are singing and chanting the name of their manager. So you sort of feel that Spurs come out of it in pretty good shape in terms of the atmosphere around their start to the season. Unfortunately, they come out of it in very bad shape in terms of the physical side of things, and also available players with those couple of red cards, and they've lost their unbeaten start to the season. Chelsea now have some added impetus. It was long awaited and very welcome for them. Mauricio Pochettino returning to Tottenham for the first time. So there's narratives all over the place. And this is box office. This is why we love the Premier League. It was sort of get the popcorn out stuff. And for a change, we weren't talking about VAR completely and all for the negative. It was actually a really enjoyable spectacle.
And forgive me if I do now focus on VAR for a while. We will come to the Chelsea and what it means for them. Is this a turning point? What it means for Spurs, with, as you said, the injuries and suspensions then, David. But Martin, VAR, of course, under the spotlight after a very controversial weekend. How do you think they got on with the big decisions on this occasion?
I think they sort of, overall, they got them right. I think the goals, certainly, the disallowed goals, they were correct. I mean, I thought that actually Spurs were lucky that they hadn't got red cards earlier, to be honest. Romero, he kicked out, didn't he, at Colwell first? I mean, that could easily have been a red card. And then Udogie, again, a sort of crazy challenge, which he just got a yellow for. But they didn't even, those two Spurs defenders didn't learn, and just were even more rash going on. So I think you can say that the VARs, I mean, perhaps they could have sent them off beforehand, but actually I think on balance, just especially after the pressure building up on them from the Arsenal, Newcastle-Arsenal match, that actually they did pretty well.
I mean, it was a huge occasion, a London derby, a massive match in the Premier League, so much at stake for both sides, David, but 2 red cards, and as Martin said, both players could have been sent off earlier in the game, arguably. Will Postecoglou be concerned by that lack of discipline on such a big night?
Yeah, a little bit on the lack of discipline. I think Christian Romero, since he joined, since the start of the 21 to 22 season, has been sent off more than any other player in the Premier League. We know he's a top player, but he's also pushing it. He's often crossing that line and going on the wrong side of the law. He could have got sent off earlier, as Martin pointed out, for a kick, and it was one of those nights where it felt a matter of time with him, and that's not great from one of your experienced players. He's one of the vice captains alongside James Maddison. And then Udogie is less experienced, and this is his first season at the club, having been out on loan last season. I think Postecoglou may be concerned at a bit of naivety, certainly, because this is, the Liverpool match was a huge one in its own right, but it got overshadowed by the VAR controversy. Tottenham might well have lost that. This time, another big club has come to their stadium and beaten them, and there goes Tottenham's unbeaten record. So he'll be depleted on numbers, but he'll also see this as a bit of a learning curve, a chance for Tottenham to grow in maturity, because they showed a bit of a lack of it at times. And yeah, I do think that will be concerning. And the back page of Martin's paper says, they unraveled, and that's true. And so they're going to need to mature. People have talked about them having a possible title challenge. Let's see as the season goes on. But when you talk about maturity, look no further than Manchester City. They'll be rubbing their hands at the end of this weekend's round of matches.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was just about to ask Martin, because there goes Spurs' unbeaten record. They've been brilliant, of course, Martin, but suspensions now for Udogie and Romero, injuries to Maddison and Van der Ven. We wait to see how serious they are. As well as Chelsea tonight, could Manchester City be seen as the big winners, if you like?
Yeah, completely. I mean, it couldn't have been a better weekend for them, hitting six. The two unbeaten teams at the top of the table, both losing. And as you say, it's going to be really difficult for Spurs, I think, to fill those places. I mean, especially if the injuries turn out to be pretty serious. I think they'll look back on this as a night where there was some sort of bounce the wall heroism from those people who managed to stay on the pitch. But overall, I think they might feel this was perhaps a sort of negative turning point for the season.
We should focus on the positives now, what this might mean for Chelsea. David, it's been a stop-start beginning, isn't it, for Pochettino? He's got a very young side there. Could a result like this in a game of this magnitude against such opposition be a turning point in the season for him and his side?
Yeah, it can. I think it's a massive night for Chelsea, because there's been such positivity around Spurs, and rightly so, with Postecoglou and the atmosphere he's engendered inside the club, the players, the staff and the supporters. Chelsea came with everybody expecting Spurs to maybe get another win and maintain their unbeaten record, go back to the top of the table in this big Monday night clash. And Chelsea, with everything that they've been through, difficult times on the pitch, enormous spending on transfers, some of which haven't worked out so well yet, the changes of managers, Pochettino coming back to his old stomping ground, and they went behind. So the way they stuck in there, and they did play some good football. I've seen a lot of reactions so far saying they were really poor tonight. And yeah, they maybe weren't at the level they'll expect to be with that level of talent at their disposal. But the way they stuck in it when it was tough, and with all the drama that was going on, and eventually ran out handsome winners, that's going to do wonders for their confidence. You think Jackson, who in his most recent appearance, I think it was against Brentford, it was a really disappointing day for him. And then he comes back with a hat-trick. He could have scored more tonight by the end as well. He was disappointed to miss that chance at the end. And across the pitch, you can just see players that are going to grow from this. There's been a lot of scrutiny about, what they might do in January, buy a striker, etc. But they've got Nkunku to come back. It's still a young and a sort of new squad that's blending, and with the ownership not being that old either still. So there's been so much going on at Stamford Bridge in the last sort of year and a half or so. A lot of it not the best. And this will go down as a really iconic night, I think, for them.
And next up for Chelsea, Martin, it's Manchester City at the weekend on Super Sunday. On this evidence, can they cause them problems too?
Well, I mean, the way Manchester City looked at the weekend, I think most people would think it's going to be a really, really tough challenge for Chelsea, even with the sort of confidence boost that this has been. But I certainly think they're going into it in a much better frame of mind, with this behind them, with Jackson scoring, and as David said, he could have had 4 or 5. It could have been the Jackson 5, but But I think, yeah, Manchester City they will take note that Chelsea can scare people, and they certainly won't be complacent about this one now.